Hello, welcome to the Back Row Chicken Restaurant presentation. These are the 5 chief executive officers of Back Row Chicken Restaurant and also our group members. Now, taking a look at the agenda, we will start with the current map of the supply chain and kind of explain how everything has been working for us so far. Next, we will look at some of the concerns within the industry that will affect the supply chain and that our current model maybe isn't ready for. Then we will improve or show the improvements to our supply chain and show a new model and explain how the new model can compensate for those potential industry concerns. But before we look into the supply chain, it is important to know the background and the nature of our restaurant. Like, who is Back Row Chicken Restaurant? Back Row Chicken Restaurant, we're a small chain fast food restaurant with central distribution going through Atlanta, although we have many locations scattered throughout the southeast United States. Being in the southeast, you might not be surprised to hear that we serve southern style food, with fried chicken being the primary item, and then traditional southern sides to go along with it, such as green beans and mashed potatoes. So now this is the model of our current supply chain. As you can see, it starts with a grower and processor. Here is a lot of raw materials or just the raw ingredients that will eventually become what we are actually selling to our customers. So here you see vegetables, tomato, lettuce, cucumbers. Have a couple beans in there, of course potatoes, and of course poultry. And as you can see, a lot of this stuff is kind of spread out through the United States, with a few items also coming from outside of the country. Then using 2PL logistics, it goes over into the processing step of the supply chain. This is kind of where the raw material becomes the actual product we are looking to use. So like tomatoes into ketchup or potatoes into French fries. And this processing step is also usually done not far from where the raw ingredient is grown. So the item doesn't really move too long of a distance till it is shipped over to our Sysco wholesale warehouse. Now here is where some packing and sorting is done, kind of getting all the ingredients and items packed and then sent over to the Back Row Chicken warehouse, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. This is where stuff is repacked and resorted to be able to distribute to the actual restaurants themselves. Here at the Back Row Chicken warehouse, we're able to distribute to the restaurants as needed, to where the Sysco wholesale warehouse is kind of just giving all of the items in bulk to the Back Row Chicken warehouse. I hope that made sense. Here is another visual of our supply chain. Hopefully this can help clear up some confusion if there is any. So this is kind of giving you a geographical look at where our supplies are coming from. You can kind of tell what has to travel far, what is pretty close. Like I said before, a lot of the stuff is coming from inside of the states, with a couple of things coming from Canada and Mexico, which aren't too far when compared to the items we have coming from China, which have to be imported in across the ocean. And then the skinny blue lines are just showing each individual item going to that Sysco warehouse, to where they can be sorted and packaged to then kind of be sent in bulk over to the to our warehouse in Atlanta, Georgia. Then, of course, like we said before, things are repackaged and resorted and then sent out to the restaurant themselves, which are represented by our logo, the black chicken. And yeah, so you can kind of see those just in the southeast region. And that is the last step in the supply chain. So here are some of our industry concerns. First one is communication. With so many distributors, different companies helping in the supply chain, different modes of transportation, and even different methods of communication, many times our supply chain partners have trouble communicating. So you get stuff like miscommunication, where the wrong information is sent through the supply chain, or delayed communication, where it's taking a while for information to travel through the supply chain. And in the fast food industry, you definitely don't want delays or miscommunication, because that can cause some of the ingredients to be held up at a certain step in the supply chain, or maybe go to the wrong place. That's not good, because with food, it can easily spoil and even possibly cause bacteria to grow. So being in the fast food industry, communication is important, because time is very much of the essence with food. And speaking of, food spoiling and bacteria growth, it kind of leads into our next concern, which is the food shipping traceability. So customers are starting to get more concerned with where their food has been. Customers want healthy food, want fresh food, and so now we are also getting some pressure from our customers to have healthy and fresh food. This is putting even more pressure on us to try to improve our communications, but it would also be helpful if we were able to trace our food in a better manner throughout the supply chain, to be able to tell where it is exactly. We'll know how long it's been since it was at the last step in the supply chain. So being able to trace the food is also a growing concern, because that's not something we have integrated into our supply chain yet. And then also just the delays since the pandemic. Transportation modes have still not fully recovered. So we have delays by sea. Even stuff through air has been delayed. Basically just all modes of transportation have been delayed. And then of course we have just shipping container shortage, chassis shortage, driver shortage. So then just a lot of our transportation, getting things from one point in the chain to the next, relies heavily, of course, on logistics. So even that part is starting to have some issues. And another huge topic of conversation that we need to consider is sustainability. Customers are always looking for sustainable products and the sustainable option. Clients want to find the right sustainable solution. So sustainability is definitely something that we need to look into, consider, and see as we are developing our new model, our new supply chain model, how we can integrate sustainability within that. So staying on the topic of sustainability, when we're developing our new supply chain model, these are the 3 areas of sustainability that we want to look into integrating into the model. So of course we have economic impacts, social impacts, and environmental impacts. So our economic sustainability kind of means we just want to stay profitable throughout all stages of the supply chain. Looking stuff at, of course, profits, income, revenue, and our food supply. And then for our social sustainability, We want to make sure our new supply chain has broad-based benefits for society. Added value distribution, make sure we get some culture traditions, nutrition, just benefits, broad benefits for society. Then lastly, of course, is environmental sustainability. It's kind of what most people are looking to when speaking about sustainability. That's just, of course, having a positive or at least neutral, at least non-negative impact on the natural environment. Of course, carbon footprint is something that always goes along with environmental sustainability. We want to look at our water footprint, soil conservation, things like that. And so we have to come up with a way to ensure that we can remain sustainable throughout our whole supply chain. And one of the ways that we think would be best is through technology. And some of these improvements we are looking to make also help solve some of the other concerns that we had. So say blockchain. Blockchain technology can improve the traceability throughout the food supply chain. Not only will that help keep us sustainable by not losing too much produce throughout the supply chain, it would also help ensure that our food is healthy and stays fresh, and is not going to soil or go bad before it gets to the restaurants. We are looking at embedded systems that will be able to monitor and control things like the water usage and agriculture and energy consumption during processing. That way we're not using too much water or using too much energy. And what I mean by too much is unnecessary water or energy. And then, of course, we're looking to, hot topic, use some machine learning and artificial intelligence. That can provide insight for the food industry businesses and ensure that they are always operating at the highest level of efficiency. And then just getting new machinery and processing equipment. That can just help reduce the food waste and decrease energy and resource consumption. These new machines and new processing equipment, these things are just more efficient. So here's our plan for improving the supply chain. As we just talked about, of course, we want to incorporate blockchain. We also want to use greenhouse farming when we can. Greenhouse farming will help prolong the longevity of the produce in both the way to where the produce will not spoil as fast, and then also in a way to where we will be able to grow the produce even when it's not seasoned. We're also looking to localize supply. So we want to bring in some of those suppliers a bit closer to home if we can. Also, if we're able to direct import at places that can reduce our 3PL cost. So looking at opportunities to maybe find a supplier that's a little bit closer to either our Texas warehouse or even the Atlanta warehouse is something that we're going to look to do. Something we're also looking to do is to develop relationships with our suppliers. A lot of our suppliers are kind of like the best suppliers of whatever they're supplying. I know that sounded kind of funny, but like where we're getting our potatoes from is the hot spot of potato production. So we want to be able to develop relationships with suppliers like that to where the alternatives just aren't as good and can't really compete with them. We want to be able to try to develop relationships with those suppliers, of course, to maybe get discounts, get better deals, and kind of grow some loyalty between us and them. And if we're able to grow and build good relationships with some of the suppliers, our chicken, for example, we would be able to completely skip over the Sysco warehouse and just go straight to our Atlanta warehouse. So opportunities like that, we will definitely be looking to do, as of course it cuts costs and can even cut some of the transportation time if we can get some things straight from the supplier. And then another thing we want to look to do is use hydroponic and vertical production. And we will talk about more of that next slide. And so vertical and hydroponic farming production is obviously something that isn't just common verbiage. So kind of get into what that means a little bit. So hydroponic farming is what this diagram is showing. It's just a way to farm without actually having to be outside and using soil. You can use like water. I think you can also use like sand in order to grow crops and produce. And then what we mean by a vertical farming system would be that we have a direct hand in the growing of the produce and of the supply of the produce. And so the benefits of combining these two type of farming styles would be, one is the ability to farm year round. So with hydroponic farming, like this diagram shows, it's almost just like growing vegetables in a lab, basically. So that's something that we can do year round, and we don't have to worry about is it the season for lettuce, or when is it cucumber season. We can just grow throughout the year. And similarly, with it being like growing in a lab, there will be protection from severe weather. So you don't have to worry about too dry of summers or super cold winters. All of this will, like the next benefit says, can be climate controlled. So that way we can get optimal growth of the produce, no matter the weather, no matter what time of year. This system will also be able to water the produce, but at a very high precision level. So this will also be good because it will lower the amount of water that we waste, because the system will be able to tell us and dictate how much water is being used and needs to be used. And then with this system, especially if it's a vertical system, we'll be able to create organic products. We won't need to use any type of preservatives because the produce won't have to travel as far to get to us. So the products will be able to be much more fresh and non-touched. So it seems like we want to make a lot of changes, which we do, but even looking at our new supply chain chart, not a ton is different. Using hydroponics, you see that we have some of our produce skipping a couple of steps in the supply chain, because that means we would be able to directly grow it ourselves, so it doesn't have to go through processing and go to the Cisco warehouse. We would just grow it, and then it would already be in the Atlanta warehouse, which of course will save on a ton of cost with logistics. We see stuff like poultry. That's something that we would be able, if we are able to grow relationships with the supplier, that would also be able to skip a step in the supply chain model. It would skip the Cisco warehouse and also just be processed and then be able to go straight to the Atlanta, Georgia warehouse. And then with a couple things, we also are able to see some localized supply. And then we have another map that geographically shows our supply chain. So it might be best to point that out then. So yeah, see here, you can see how we brought some of the suppliers in closer where we could. Most notably the green beans and chicken. Those are two things that were coming from China, but now we're getting them produced in the States. That's obviously going to bring them closer to the Texas warehouse and the Atlanta warehouse, which will cut down on logistics cost, freight cost, and all of that. And something that's also noteworthy is that there are far less of those skinny blue lines, because using hydroponics would be able to produce a lot of the vegetables in the same place. So they would all take the same trip straight to the Atlanta warehouse. And so I think looking at this map compared to the first one, you can see how things are looking more efficient, more condensed, and more simple, which is always going to help with efficiency and saving costs. And with that, it concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for your time.